Assalamu alaikum, good evening everybody. The last time actually that I was here and speaking at City Circle event, it was actually my first time as well, and that was in 2005, 8 years ago. And I was just saying to Asim earlier on, I said, I must have been really bad that I haven't been invited for 8 years, so you must not leave it another 8 years and invite me back a lot sooner, because I have many things to say on many topics. And obviously today's talk is about the veil. And I was wondering actually, I thought, is anybody going to turn up? Because I think in a way, I think people have had a bit of an overload about talking about the veil. It's been in the media non-stop almost for 4 or 5 weeks. Normally it's about a week and then it goes away. But I think you lot must enjoy getting punished. You want to hear it all again. But hopefully I can maybe say something different. Obviously, every time the veil is in the media, the same arguments come out, the same commentators come out. But I don't really want to focus on that. I really want to sort of take a different angle on it. But just quickly to tell you what my views are, just in case you're interested. I always say more or less the same thing, which is I'm honest, and I do say actually I'm not keen on the veil, don't particularly like it. However, I do oppose any ban on it. And obviously in certain circumstances I do think the face should be shown. And I'll speak about that and support a woman's right to wear what she wants to wear. So that's my view out of the way. But really, what I want to focus on is who is leading the debate on the veil in terms of trying to ban it, who's more generally leading the debate on women's dress generally, not just the veil, just generally really. So and I think we know the answer, which is men, which you alluded to anyway. I think that what we really should be talking about is not what the veil or what women should or should not be wearing. The real debate should be why are men controlling what women wear, and that's what really we should be challenging. In terms of, so really for the rest of my talk I'm going to try and focus on that. Whether we like it or not, a woman's work, unfortunately, through history, around the world, in different cultures, it is connected to clothing. And the women's dress choice is influenced by social pressures. And if you don't conform to a certain dress code, then you are stigmatised or victimised or even punished. So, for example, in the Muslim world, if you're not covered up, you'll be labelled as immoral, bringing dishonour to the family and community. In the West, if you're wearing a veil, you're sort of viewed as a threat, security threat, or threat to culture, or not being integrated enough. And if you look at who constructs these kind of social pressures, it is men, and I will go into more detail. But I think, let's be honest, whether you're overly dressed or underdressed or somewhere in the middle, regardless of what faith, culture, ethnic background you're from, the truth is actually, all women will still face sexism and misogyny. It will just be in different contexts, and we'll see them in different forms, really. And I think that's why we need to be having a debate on, who's controlling what women wear. So we're saying that men are controlling what women wear. How do they do it? And again, it's something that you alluded to. Men have a power in 3 spheres, really: in religious institutions, political institutions, and the social sphere, social institutions. And what they do is they use those sort of decision-making positions, and they organise and control society. And what they do is they sell two views are sold to society, particularly women, and women are under pressure to buy one of these 2 views, which is women either need to dress to get attention, or they need to, and this is where I guess, dressing more skimpily, you see that in imagery around you, sexualising women. And I think the other one is dressing to, the other one that you're sold is dressing to protect men from themselves. So this is where men play the helpless victim. Unless you cover yourself up fully, I might be tempted to, rape you or whatever. So you're kind of bought into the, and quite frankly, if men can't take responsibility for their own actions, thoughts and desires, well, perhaps they should have been home and stay indoors, really, which is my thoughts. But what I want to do is I want to sort of start off with talking about Muslim women in Britain, and then kind of work my way around the world and go through history and then come back to today. I think at the moment Muslim women in Britain are under intense pressure to conform. It's become a battleground. So if you're not wearing a hijab or niqab, you're not Muslim enough. I've been told that enough times. And if you're covered with hijab and niqab, and you're told, well, you know, you're not integrated enough, so you know you can't win either way, really. And if you look currently, you know, the veils doesn't seem to lead the news, but look at who's actually controlling or who's leading, who the leading voices. They don't actually tend to be. They actually tend to be men. So. Recently, Jeremy Brown said we need a national debate on the veil. His portfolio was, before he changed positions recently, was violence against women. Why are we not having a national debate on violence against women? Far more important topic. And then there's Philip Hollowburn, Conservative MP. He wants to bring the private members' bill to ban the veil. And then obviously the leaders of EDL and BNP, again, men talking about the veil. In Holland, you've got Geert Wilders. There's only about a few dozen women wear the veil, but he wants it banned. Nicolas Sarkozy, he was instrumental in getting the veil banned there, and so on. And you could go through each country, you know, Belgium, Germany, and so on, and it tends to be men that are the most vocal in this arena. So really, what's their intention? Are they really concerned about women's integration, or are women being used as political pawns, you know, to get votes, basically, which is the latter. I also want to talk about Muslim men as well, so actually how they shape in the debate. So let's talk about, I mean, I've spoken to women who wear the veil, and some of them are forced, but a lot of them will say, actually, it's my choice, my other family members don't wear it, and I believe what they say. However, the only thing I'd question is, I always wonder, and it's something that needs exploring further, is how informed, and maybe you could shed some light on this, Shalina, is how informed the choice is. Because if you look at where people get their information from, websites and books and Islamic bookshops, you tend to get one view, and I think an informed decision would be based on you getting two views, opposing views, and then you make up your mind. And so I sometimes think, well, is it an informed choice, and who's writing these books and things like that, and who's delivering these lectures, on YouTube and things like that, tend to be men. And I worry about that, because when you think about Saudi and Iran, you think, well, you know where they stand, you know, they've got their dress codes, and, you know, it's very overt and obvious. So I kind of worry about the ways that you even have Skype, you even have some sheikhs saying to women, get a group of women in the house and I'll deliver a lecture via Skype from abroad or from another city. And I think that slow kind of manipulation can be dangerous if it's not an informed choice. And I think it's something that we really need looking into. I think that silent pressure is going unnoticed, and sometimes I think men are deceiving women into believing it's an informed choice, basically. But again, I'm going to try and explore that further. I think talking about Saudi, Iran, Afghanistan, etc. And you know the score there, but actually the other recent examples in Mali, Timbuktu, when the extremists took power there, this was last year, you probably saw it in the news, the first thing that they did was, any law that they could have implemented in Timbuktu was the colour of women have to wear the headscarf, and the headscarf has to be black. Then they got an old bank and turned it into a prison just for women who did not wear the hijab. So they found women who were not covered, they stuck them in that prison, basically. And then in Sudan, you probably heard again a few years ago, they think it's against Sharia for women to wear trousers, and a journalist who was wearing modest baggy trousers was arrested and sentenced to lashes in Sudan. But it's not just Muslim women. I mean, again, you must have heard on the news as well, Jewish women have got fight on their hands. They want to wear the prayer shawl and go and pray at the wall in Jerusalem. They've been doing that, a group of activists, and when they do that, the religious men, throw stones at them, spit at them, and swear at them, saying, how dare you pray at the wall and wear that cloth around you, it's reserved just for men. So they recently, a few months ago, went to court and got a legal ruling to say, yes, they are allowed to wear this cloth on their shoulders, but now they're trying to fight to get a piece of the wall. And then, I think it was in Malawi, the previous president, he passed a law that women were, it's a Christian country predominantly, men were not allowed to wear trousers and skirts there. And that law's been repealed, but I think several months ago, women were attacked in the market and beaten up for wearing skirts and trousers. This is conservative Christian men. So what do they have in common? So first talked about politicians controlling the debate. These are, you know, I guess people using religion in a way to control what women wear. Before I talk about the social aspect and the entertainment industry, I just want to quickly go through history because I think that's relevant and important. People forget. People always associate veiling with something that, you know, Muslims brought in or innovated or brought to the world. And actually, you know, the veil predates Islam. The ancient Greek women wore it. Persian women. The Christian Byzantine Empire, so the Byzantines were, after the Roman Empire, they were Greek-speaking Christian, and it was basically elite women that wore the veil, so it was a sign of, this is a woman, you know, this is a family, a sign of wealth and a woman that's been kept. And in India, again, women of high status and of the higher caste wore the face veil. Then Islam came along, and as Islam spread, they started to adopt local cultures, and even interpretations were used to try and then, I suppose, justify some of the local cultures. And by the second Islamic century, veiling became common. So I think it's important to remember that. And I want to give a couple of examples of two women that rejected the veil in early Islam. These stories men won't tell you, or the ones that are promoting the veil, they will hide these stories, and then they'll make excuses to say these stories aren't true. One of them was Aisha bint Talha. She was actually the niece of Aisha's niece, so she was called Aisha as well. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, was his wife Aisha, so her niece. And she basically, her husband wanted her to wear the face veil, and she refused to wear the face veil. I just want to quote what she said. She said, "Since the Almighty have put on me the stamp of beauty, it is my wish that the public should view the beauty and thereby recognise His grace onto me. On no account, therefore, I will veil myself." And the other one is Sukaina, the Prophet's great-granddaughter. So she was the daughter of Ali and Fatima, the daughter of Hussein. And she basically was very clever, very beautiful. She took a lot of interest in politics, and loads of men would come to debate with her. And she was really interesting. She refused to veil, but also in her marriage contract, she stipulated that she will not obey her husband, and she will do as she pleases, but also her husband is not allowed to commit polygamy. Having said that, she did go through 5 or 6 marriages. I don't know why, you have to look into that. But it could be that she'd signed a marriage contract and the men were not complying with their end of the bargain, and she divorced them. But, which actually, we should take the marriage contract seriously. So now it's become a piece of paper, so she obviously took it quite seriously. So, however, some scholars have tried to assassinate even Sukaina by saying, oh, she died when she was 5 years old, these stories are not true, and then use dubious sources to try and justify that and ignore quite strong sources. So, okay, let's move fast forward. I can't go through each century. So if we go back to, say, more than 100 years ago, if you look at women's rights activists in Iran and Syria, and, Pakistan, Bangladesh, it was India then, the Middle Eastern countries, particularly Egypt, elite women started to reject the veil, actually. And before that, elite women wore it, but prostitutes, slaves, and the poor women were actually banned from wearing the face veil, which shows that it was to do with class and not religion. So anyway, about more than 100 years ago, elite women started to reject the veil. However, the poor women started to adopt it because for them it was a sign of upward mobility and increasing their status. And you can read about these, and I don't have I can't time to give examples of all the different stories, but I want to give one of my favourite ones of Ruqayya Hussain. It was a Bangladeshi woman, but back then it was India, and she got educated through her husband, and she wrote a book called Sultana's Dreams, and in that she has this, has a fictitious place called Ladyland, and in Ladyland she reverses the roles of everybody, so the men are at home veiled doing the household duties, and the women are rulers and in the public sphere. And so if you want to read that book, you can Google it on Amazon and get hold of it. And interestingly, an American feminist, 10 years after her, Charlotte Gilman, wrote a very similar book, and she had an imaginary land and called it Her Land. So I don't know if she'd actually read Sultana's Dreams, because it's quite close. And then, if you look also what was happening in sort of Europe, medieval Europe, and if you look at the old paintings, you'll see that actually women in Europe were also covered, their heads were covered. They just had a different form of headdress, really. And if you look at the paintings, you'll only see their face and hands in most of the paintings. So really, you know, they were also conforming to a particular social pressure. Fast forwarding again to present day, I don't know whether you know, but in France recently, in January I think, they had a 200-year law was repealed. Women in France were not allowed to wear trousers, by the way, up until several months ago. So they never enforced it, obviously, but 200 years ago someone passed a law saying women in Paris cannot wear trousers, and after many, many tries, finally it got repealed recently. I mean, how mad is that, really? And, you know, since I've been growing up, I mean, I've seen so many things in the news about, you know, women in sports can't wear have to wear skirts and can't wear shorts or trousers, and women have had battles. I think there's a boxing one recently. I remember growing up, had to wear a skirt, couldn't wear trousers, and so, you know, dress has always been something that's there. And how many minutes have I got? 5? Right, okay, trying to... So I've been sort of talking more about covering up, and now I'll try and talk about the reverse. I suppose there's a pressure, either a pressure to cover up, or I guess to expose. And there's all the debates, you know, you've heard about Miley Cyrus, and then there's the Femen. And again, you know, for many years people thought actually a woman had started that, and recently it came out a man was actually the founder, and he said that these are the topless girls who protest and campaign, and he said he chose the prettiest ones because the pretty ones, the newspaper will want their pictures in the newspapers and will sell papers basically. Video games, you know, the Grand Theft Auto aimed at boys, male characters, but when you saw the bus adverts on buses, it had a woman in a bikini advertising a boy for games aimed at boys. Pop videos, superheroes are, if you've seen them, really voluptuous. They've enhanced their breasts or have low cleavages. So if you look at the imagery around you, women are sexualised and turned into sex objects. Even young girls now. You know, like the clothing you've seen probably in the stores, there's been debate around that. The clothing is becoming sexualised as well. And so if you look at who controls the media, the entertainment industry, and, you know, the fashion industry, it is men. So why are men controlling women's dress? Well, it's either for politics and power or profit. So look, you know, if you've got a skimpily dressed woman, it's going to sell, you know, magazines or newspapers. But equally, if you have a veiled woman, it will sell papers. So, for example, I've seen many articles about Muslim women that's got nothing to do with the veil, but you see a picture of a face veil. I've been interviewed a couple of times for newspapers, and the interview is not about face veils, it's about other things. And there's a big picture of a woman with a face veil. So why is that? Because they believe that that's what's going to... A picture of me is not going to sell the paper, it will be the woman with a face veil. And the other is power and politics. All these politicians and religious institutions, the first thing they do is, whether it's religion or whether it's politicians, because it's very visible, isn't it? Rather than doing some policy that makes sense and that we need, But if you do something really visual to do with a woman, either covering her up or making her take her veil off, it's very visual, isn't it? You're sort of saying, here, the boss is here, I'm here, it's kind of making a statement. So I think it's to do with control. So to try and conclude, really, I'd say that through their power, through all the different ways that I've said, men will construct culture, they will pass laws, they will then enforce those policies, and they will do that in a way to control, I would say, women and children, to serve their own interests, which I've explained what that is. And they kind of decide through these dress codes if a woman is available or unavailable. They're kind of, invisibly making those decisions. So what I really want to say is that if women are to live in this world with dignity and equality, they need to have control of their minds and bodies. They need to be making those choices, not men. So this is what we need to be really and challenging. And I think women have the right to dress freely as men, and I think that's the most important thing. And really, I want to finish with that, but just a quick question for the audience, so maybe we can pick it up in the Q&A. A lot of debate about the veil, but more and more people now, compared to several years ago, we're interacting online forums, Facebook, Twitter, and so on, most of the time than actually face-to-face interactions. Most of the people on there are anonymous. They don't have pictures, or they have fake pictures, you don't even know who you're talking to. And they use those fake identities to bully and threaten people. I find them more of a threat than a woman wearing a face veil. So maybe that's the kinds of debates we should be having. But that's a question. I don't know what you think of that. You may agree or you may disagree. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaisa. That was a lot to think about. Save your questions for the end. Our next speaker is Shalina Witt, and again, she'll be speaking about her insight and experience wearing the niqab. And also, she's a full-time teacher, and she wears niqab while teaching.
Okay. Hello, good evening, and assalamu alaikum to everybody. And thank you so much for inviting me. So little introduction, I think, would only be fair. In the last month, I have had the opportunity to go on world media and share a spiritual experience. And in a month, I feel like I've gone through my own crash course, my own spiritual crash course, and I've been exposed to many different things. So I think it's fair that everyone understands that I'm not someone who spent most of my life preparing to be sitting on a platform and sharing a spiritual experience. My intention when I first went onto media was really just to personalise the experience, because I felt that the veil or the Muslim woman had been dehumanised, and there were so many people that were able to go on a platform and say all of these things about the way that a Muslim woman thought, and I kept thinking, I was frustrated, and I kept thinking, it's a shame that there isn't someone who goes up there and, and represents kind of thing. Little did I know I was one of them. So I took the opportunity to share an experience and say, I don't think this is a case of people should challenge a woman's intelligence because she chooses to cover up more. I choose to wear my veil where I feel it is appropriate. When I'm in a classroom and I'm in front of people from different backgrounds that I will feel a discomfort, or the veil will lose its function or its purpose, I choose to remove the veil so that I can achieve what it is I'm there to learn people. And that's me and my interpretation of how I can use the veil in a setting or in an experience. So that's the introduction. So now I'll begin with my journey. And I have to start from the fact that from an age of 15, I was in the music business. I was a professional recording artist, and I was out there with some very famous people, and I got to the point where I got offered an international recording deal. And at that point, I had fans, I had people getting my image and putting me on prayers, and it was, wow, it was like an overwhelming experience. But I was also on a spiritual experience. And from the age of 15 up until 24, I met people that were meant to be happy, that were meant to have it all. The car, the house, the girls, the good body, the women, everything. But behind closed doors, they were drinking, they were, on drugs. There was their character and their whole demeanour. It was a very ugly and dark world. And fame gave them no emotional gratification, So people really looked up to them. So I was able to have a window into that, So I chose to go on my own spiritual journey. But I also seen how much men have the opportunity to control the industry, and Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, all of them, we have seen them come onto a platform, start off as the innocent little girl, and then within a very short space of time, they go into another world. There's an artist called Lauryn Hill, who now has come out and shared her experiences and said that as a young person, I was easily influenced. And as she's grown older, she now understands what she became part of. She was used as a tool, to manipulate an abundance of people. Because as an artist, when people grow to love you through your performance, through the way that you sing and you connect with them emotively, they then do, anything they do, we become to question. So, when we look at, for example, Rihanna, Good Girl Gone Bad, and the latest picture where she was outside and mastered, all of a sudden, these people, what they do gets blown out of proportion. Now, I got exposed to that experience very early on and chose to turn away from the music industry and go and get a degree about early childhood studies. And I just wanted to do it so that I could learn how to raise my children and protect them and raise them the best way that I knew how. So I started to learn about emotional well-being and all of the other things that would raise them to be successful. And I realised that there are certain things that may actually be a hindrance to them. And I had to make an informed choice to protect my children from these things. So the music they listened to, the games they were playing, and the experiences that were making them who they are, I wanted to raise a well-rounded young person. So I went into, alongside I'm learning about how we're affected, in this world, and on the other hand, I want spiritual gratification. I'm not content because I've had the fame, had the opportunity to have it. I've seen that it doesn't do anything for me, And I read into death testimonies and realised that when we die, people were saying in their testimonies that what they valued most was spending time with family. So I'm thinking to myself, how do we get so swayed away into this world and caught up with other people's agendas? My time became questioned. When I'm spending, at the time it was MySpace, when I put my children to bed and I sat down to watch EastEnders, how many people in the world were doing this? So my whole behaviour, my time became questioned. So I went through Buddhism, I went through Christianity, and then I came across Islam. And I thought, oh, that's good, but I don't want to dress like that, so I'll keep moving. And I kept moving, you know, because I thought about the way a woman was dressed and thought, no, not for me. But all of these experiences acted as snowflakes that were falling on the roof of my house, if you want to call it. And I guess it took that one snowflake to cause this avalanche. And it was an avalanche of certainty from the truth. And I guess it was spiritual intervention. Now, many times, a lot of people ask me, why do you cover your face? And if you found in one interview that I've answered, then good on you, because I've never answered that question. Because what I say to people is, if it took me years to get to this place, how are you going to understand in a couple of sentences or a couple of seconds, you know, why I choose to cover my face? People barely understand why people cover their hair, you know. So I never ever shared that experience because it was a built upon experience that gave me certainty. So then I became a Muslim. And that was an experience again which was built upon. I didn't immediately start covering my face. But within the space of 3 months I was covering my face, you know. And I guess I realised that the way that I dressed was almost like a filter system, you know, and when you dress up, because, you know, there's ladies out there, and we know we look good, you know, when we're there in front of the mirror. When I dressed up a certain way, it did change the way or the content of a conversation. So, for example, if I'm trying to speak to somebody, they can't get past, I don't know, the fact that I am wearing Gucci from head to toe, I know you're hating, you know, kind of thing. Or whatever things there are that have shaped people to think the way that they do. Just like everybody here today thought that they knew me before they actually got to know me. Our attitudes and beliefs have been shaped into thinking we know about something that we don't know. So for me, media has played part of being an education process that I wanted to become part of. So I realise now that there was men controlling the music industry, and there's now men controlling the media. But then, I got involved into Islam. And what did I realise? In the space of a month, I realised that I am associated with a piece of cloth, an article of faith, that holds a lot of weight on it. I work with the community. I meet many women who are broken, and they all claim to be Muslims, and they were righteous and they were pious. So I'm like, what's going on? Why are they broken? What happened? They were talking about men, the men that were in abundance. So I have to question myself, because I think if somebody can challenge my certainty in my faith, then I'm not upon the truth. And that's what I think we should all understand. When the truth is delivered to you, will you really accept it? Yeah? So I had to go back to my Lord and look for answers. And I was asked to do a blog about why women cover their face. And I really had to sleep on it, because I thought, you know what, no, it's not fair. I have to at least attempt to give an answer. So I wrote a blog called Protect Me From Myself. And I began by comparing a lap dancer and a woman who wants to veil and cover herself. The woman is governed by her own desires. She's free to do what she wants. Whereas the woman who covers herself is doing it to please her Lord, the one that she believes created her. Now, what controls our behaviour are laws. Laws are brought in to protect us from ourselves and from those around us. That's the only time that we have that intervention, which is where I think in recent media footage where the ladies in the courtroom, it was a grey area. Oh my what are we going to do? Everybody was like, how do we deal with this? You know, so for me, that's where the law bit came into. Now I had to quickly learn about law. And then where did law come from? What's the root of law now? To my understanding, like I said, I'm probably going to get emails about this, but to my understanding, law came from the Ten Commandments. This is where we had the introduction, where we had these laws telling us how to behave. So then I thought, okay, well then, how did the other things come in that are supposedly not meant to have anything to do, like homosexuality and other things? How did they come into place? How did we allow them? So then I learned about moral law, human rights, and I realised, okay, so we had government that came into place and introduced statutory law. So then all of a sudden I thought, okay, so if there was a bunch of men, predominantly men, okay, a few women, who had a set of attitudes and beliefs, a natural inclination to want the woman to look a certain way, then they will achieve that by introducing that law. So we have two types of laws that are being introduced. And in the end, what we have today is the lap dancer has a place to go for men to see her how she chooses, and it's okay for her. If she wants to take off her clothes and get paid to take off her clothes, that's okay. But for the woman who wants to cover her face, what's the debate? What is the debate? Am I harming myself? Am I harming those around me? So, now I went into schools, I'm covering racism. And I speak to young children. And for me, it finally came to a conclusion where I isolated the situation. And I said to my students, okay, let's isolate this. You stand in front of me. The person that stands in front of me says to me, lift your veil because I do not feel comfortable. So, I lift my veil. But guess what happens? When I lift my veil, I no longer feel comfortable. So whose discomfort are we going to favour? Should we favour one discomfort over the other? Really, now it comes down to necessity. Who is harming who? Now if the other person is getting palpitations because they see the person with the veil, then what does Islam say about that? That the woman should lift her veil. There's no compulsion on the woman in Islam. And if she understands that she's been oppressed and she doesn't do anything about it, she becomes the oppressor of herself. So for me, I realised that we have three types of oppressions now. We have the music industry, predominantly men. You have the media, predominantly men. But now they've got something which is a tool, the power to put out there and project a set of attitudes and beliefs that help you think that you understand a veiled woman, when you don't, unless you've sat down and you spoke to one and realised she made a choice. When you look at a veiled woman, you can no longer determine whether the woman in front of you has chose to wear this because of a true understanding of Islam or because of an accumulation of cultural beliefs and practices. We don't know that, but is that the debate? Should we intervene on that? Because of course, if Islam was a product and men were running it and women were running it, and Islam was a packet of biscuits, okay, and it was on a conveyor belt, and it went down the conveyor belt, and what's going to come out at the end? Of course, the packet of biscuits is going to look very different, maybe, to how the men want it to look, and how the women want the packet of biscuits to look, you know. But that's a religious debate, and it's something, for me, I'm going through a spiritual journey, and I've got to these answers because I've had to look for the truth. But is it right for all of us here to take part in a debate that impinges my religious freedom There's no harm. I'm not harming anybody or anybody around me. And I have full understanding of what I'm doing. But why has the veil become such an issue? Is it because men now have the power in abundance in the media, in the music industry, in religious institutes, to impose these attitudes and beliefs and control the way we do look? Well, in the meantime, there are serious other issues like domestic violence, sexual abuse, people who are suicidal. I go out there and I help women. My veil has never got in the way of me achieving what I want to get done. I do radio presenting, I go out there in schools. I am not the problem. The problem is our focus. And yes, that's how I like to end.